In 1867, Russia made a decision that would forever change the map of North America. It sold Alaska to the United States for just $7.2 million. At the time, most people believed the frozen land was almost worthless, but history would prove them spectacularly wrong. Today, Alaska is one of the richest regions on Earth, filled with oil, natural gas, gold, and abundant fisheries. Looking back, the decision seems almost impossible to understand. So why would Russia willingly give away such a vast territory? To answer that question, we must travel back nearly 3 centuries to a time when Russian explorers first set their eyes on an unknown land beyond the icy sea. The story actually began long before 1867. In the early 18th century, the Russian Empire was pushing east across the endless wilderness of Siberia, searching for new wealth and new opportunities. Beyond the frozen horizon lay a land almost no European had ever seen. In 1741, an expedition led by Vitus Bering finally reached the coast of Alaska. There, the explorers discovered countless sea otters, whose luxurious fur was worth a fortune in China and across Europe. Almost overnight, Alaska changed from an unknown frontier into one of Russia's most valuable possessions. But turning that distant discovery into a successful colony would prove far more difficult than anyone expected. At first, Alaska seemed like a dream come true for Russia. The fur trade brought enormous profits, and Russian settlements quickly appeared along the coast. But there was one problem. Alaska was simply too far away. Every ship carrying food, supplies, or soldiers had to travel thousands of kilometers across some of the world's most dangerous seas. Long winters, violent storms, and freezing temperatures made life incredibly difficult. As sea otter populations began to decline from overhunting, the colony became less profitable every year. What had once looked like a priceless opportunity was slowly turning into an expensive burden. By the middle of the 19th century, Alaska was no longer the valuable colony Russia had once hoped for. The fur trade continued to decline, while the cost of keeping the distant settlement alive grew higher every single year. Food, supplies, equipment, and workers all had to cross the vast Pacific Ocean before finally reaching Alaska, making every journey slow, expensive, and incredibly dangerous. The colony remained isolated from the rest of the Russian Empire, and protecting it became an increasingly difficult challenge. Many officials in St. Petersburg quietly began asking the same question. If Alaska was costing more than it earned, was it still worth keeping at all? Before they could find the answer, a crisis in Europe would change everything. Then came the Crimean War, one of the greatest disasters in the history of the Russian Empire. The conflict drained the country's economy, exposed serious weaknesses in its military, and left the government desperately searching for ways to rebuild. At the same time, Alaska suddenly looked far more vulnerable than anyone had imagined. Russian leaders knew that if another war with Britain ever erupted, British forces based in nearby Canada could capture the colony long before Russian reinforcements had any chance of arriving. The Empire simply lacked the money and manpower needed to defend such a distant territory. Losing Alaska in war would bring nothing in return, but selling it could strengthen Russia's finances while keeping the territory out of British hands. Russia had made its decision. Alaska had to be sold. But choosing the right buyer was just as important as deciding to sell. Britain was the obvious choice geographically, but Russia refused to strengthen its greatest rival. Instead, the Russian government turned its attention to the United States, a rising power with friendly relations and growing influence across North America. If America owned Alaska, Britain would be blocked from expanding farther along the Pacific coast. Russia also believed that a stronger United States would help balance British power in the region for many years to come. For Russia, selling Alaska to the United States was more than a business deal. It was a carefully calculated political move designed to protect Russia's long-term interests. On March 30th, 1867, the agreement was finally signed, ending months of careful negotiations between Russia and the United States. Russia officially sold Alaska for just $7.2 million, a price that seemed reasonable to both governments at the time. But many Americans completely disagreed. Newspapers laughed at the purchase and called it Seward's folly and Seward's icebox, insisting that millions had been wasted on a frozen land filled with snow, ice, and almost nothing else. Few people realized they were witnessing one of the most important land deals in modern history. Within only a few decades, that same frozen wilderness would completely change America's future in ways almost nobody could have predicted. Gold changed everything. Thousands of hopeful prospectors crossed Alaska's frozen wilderness in search of a better life. They built small camps beside icy rivers, believing gold was hidden beneath the freezing water. Every pan of gravel brought a new chance. Most found nothing, but a lucky handful would uncover glittering pieces of gold. Life in the mining camps was brutally hard. Prospectors dug frozen ground all day before gathering around campfires to survive the freezing nights. News of Alaska's gold spread across America, filling thousands with dreams of instant fortune. Without hesitation, many packed their belongings, gathered their tools, and prepared for the long journey north, leaving their old lives behind in search of a better future. They said emotional goodbyes, knowing they might never return home again, but hoping the journey would change their lives forever. Day after day, crowded docks filled with hopeful prospectors boarding ships bound for Alaska. Men, women, and even entire families left everything behind, each believing that somewhere beyond the frozen horizon, a single discovery of gold could change their lives forever. As the ships disappeared beyond the horizon, few could imagine that this journey would change countless lives and shape Alaska's future forever. For many, it was the beginning of a great adventure, driven by hope and the dream of finding gold. After weeks at sea, the first prospectors finally arrived in Alaska. Stepping onto the frozen shore, they quickly realized the real journey had only just begun. Carrying everything they owned, they formed long lines across the snow, pulling heavy sleds filled with tools and supplies. Mile after mile, they pushed deeper into the frozen wilderness, believing that somewhere beyond the endless forests and icy trails, unimaginable riches were waiting to be discovered. After days of travel, the group reached a frozen river and quickly set up camp before searching for gold. Hour after hour, they dug through frozen ground and carefully washed gravel in the icy river. Every pan brought new hope, but finding gold demanded endless patience and determination. Then, their patience was finally rewarded. Tiny flakes of gold sparkled in the pan, and the camp erupted with excitement. Every hardship suddenly felt worthwhile. Not long before, this had been nothing but an empty wilderness, with only a lonely river flowing through the silent landscape. Everything changed with astonishing speed. Wooden cabins rose one after another, new streets appeared, and horse wagons carried people and supplies through the growing settlement. What had once been a silent wilderness was quickly becoming a busy frontier town, full of hope and opportunity. Along the riverbanks, the search never stopped. Every day, miners dug deeper and patiently washed gravel, hoping the next pan would reveal another fortune. Within only a few years, the lonely frontier had become a thriving town, filled with busy streets, smoke rising from wooden homes, and thousands of people chasing new opportunities. The gold rush had transformed Alaska forever. Today, Alaska is one of America's richest regions, producing vast amounts of oil that power industries and economies around the world every single day, generating enormous wealth. Its cold northern waters also support one of the world's largest and most valuable fishing industries. Modern cities, highways, and thriving communities now stand where only wilderness once existed, creating a vibrant and prosperous future for generations. Its strategic location makes Alaska just as valuable for national security as it is for its natural resources. Looking back, the purchase of Alaska became one of the greatest land deals in history.